I recognize the distinguished delegate from Turkey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. First of all, let me thank Madam Director General for this comprehensive report on the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territories. This report registers once again the ongoing suffering of the Palestinians. We note with regret that people in the occupied territories continue to live in extremely poor conditions and are being deprived of their basic humanitarian needs. We are extremely concerned about their present health conditions, especially women and children, who are the most vulnerable group amongst them. Indeed, the main health concern continues to stem from avoidable and preventable causes which are closely associated with the occupation. As stressed in the Director General's report before us, physical and procedural barriers for access to health care still continue. Especially delay and rejection in issuing permits for referral to hospitals in East Jerusalem cause loss of innocent human lives. Moreover, the restrictions imposed on the movement of patients, health staff and medical goods prevent the functioning of the health system. These restrictions are blocked on Palestine are illegal, inhuman and unacceptable. Besides, hindered access to health services, in particular for the Palestinians who are held in prisons and military facilities. Another important and major issue of concern is, unfortunately, the attacks against health facilities and personnel as well as patients. We severely condemn all these unacceptable actions. In this context, Turkey is once again strongly calls for lifting the inhuman and unlawful blockade on Gaza. Mr. Chairperson, we commend the efforts of WHO and other UN agencies working to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people who have been faced with prevailing dire health conditions. In this vein, we expect from international community to fulfill its responsibility to end this acute humanitarian crisis. We are pleased that Turkey's humanitarian aid, including fuel and foodstuff as well as medicine, which are urgently needed in Gaza, are being delivered to the critical centers like hospitals and water sanitation facilities at a crucial time. Our total official development assistance to Palestine since 2003, including projects and commitments for 2016 and 2017, will reach $500 million USD. We have also directly contributed 1.5 and healthcare centers in Gaza. Fully aware of the dire humanitarian situation in Palestine, Turkey will continue its unwavering support to the Palestinian people. Therefore, we co-sponsor the draft decision and invite all member states to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Turkey. I now recognize the distinguished delegate from Algeria to be followed by the distinguished delegate of South Africa.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. Algeria has the honour of taking the floor on behalf of the 47 member states of the African region on this item 19 of our agenda, on the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syria Golan. The African region is concerned with the respect of the key principles set out for in the WHO Constitution, according to which the health of all peoples is a fundamental condition for peace and security, and considering the fact that free access to healthcare is an essential element of the right to health. We reiterate our concern on the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. This situation is of great concern, and it has been worsened by the degradation of social, economic and healthcare conditions resulting from the protracted occupation, but also by the restrictions to the freedom of circulation and the regime of permits, which has limited access to various healthcare services. Also, African region believes that this situation is a serious hindrance to the enjoyment of the right to health and would call, on the one hand, to lift these restrictions and to protect civilians as well as to establishments and healthcare institutions in the occupied territories, and also for the full respect of the various resolutions and decisions on an international and regional level, including that of the African Union on the situation in Palestine. Besides, the African region would again draw your attention to the quality of life and the state of health of prisoners in Palestine, children and women, which is a violation of law, international law and legal standards of human rights, particularly conventions on the rights of the child and the rights of women. The African region welcomes the efforts undertaken by the WHO, its members and its partners, and in the support they provide to the Palestinian Health Ministry. The African region believes, therefore, that it is more urgent than ever to address this healthcare crisis to meet the fundamental healthcare needs of those people in Palestine territory and the Syrian Golan through strengthening support and the assistance that is necessary for their health care, and also by stepping up humanitarian assistance in emergencies which is targeted at them. Thus, the African region supports the draft decision as proposed for adoption, and thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Algeria. I recognize the distinguished delegate of South Africa to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Ecuador.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please allow me, on behalf of my delegation, to congratulate you and your Bureau on your election. We would like to align ourselves with the statement just read by the delegation of Algeria. And we wish to thank the World Health Organization Secretariat for producing the report, which further recognized the need to remain committed to addressing this serious situation. In line with its long-standing position as expressed in previous sessions, South Africa wishes to express its deep concern regarding the deplorable socio-economic and health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem. Mr. Chair, my delegation is concerned about the barriers, both physical and procedural, that continue to restrict access to healthcare facilities in occupied Palestinian territories. Our commitment to leaving no one behind in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, including the Goal 3 and its targets on universal health coverage, will only be fulfilled when we stop turning a blind eye to the gross violation of human rights of those living in these territories. We fully concur with the recommendations contained in Report A/70/39, in particular those relating to allowing unhindered access to healthcare workers to their workplace to enable them to provide healthcare services to those in need. South Africa commits the efforts of the relevant UN agencies, the World Health Organization and partners in assisting Palestinian people who are faced with significant difficulties on a daily basis, including damage to hospital and clinics, as well as the lack of basic services such as water and obstruction of the delivery of health supplies. We appreciate the World Health Organization's continued efforts to assist the Palestinian Ministry of Health in its health programs and policies. In this regard, we note with appreciation the 5-year Non-Communicable Disease National Strategy 2015-2019 and a 2-year action plan aimed at improving surveillance through screening programs and service delivery through WHO package on essential non-communicable disease intervention. We wish to once again call on the international community to continue to assist the Palestinian people in light of the negative focus highlighted by the report, with donor aid flows projected to decrease further in 2018. Furthermore, South Africa reiterates its call to Israel to end all forms of restrictions that impede the free movement of people and, by extension, prevent them from having access to healthcare services. Accordingly, we reiterate the need for full implementation of World Health Assembly Resolution 65.9. Mr. Chair, South Africa strongly believes that the socio-economic needs, including the health conditions of Palestinian people, cannot be fully addressed without the recognition and realization of their legitimate right to self-determination. Furthermore, South Africa supports the establishment of medical facilities and provision of health-related technical assistance to the Syrian population in the occupied Syrian Golan. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of South Africa. I recognize the distinguished delegate of Ecuador to be followed by Cuba.
Señora Directora General, muy buenos días.
Good morning, Director General. Good afternoon, rather. Allow me to, at the outset, recognize the fact that Ecuador considers health to be an essential individual social right, which allows for people to take full advantage of their opportunities throughout the life cycle, and their undiscriminatory guarantee is essential for basic living conditions. In this regard, we express our deepest concern over the flagrant violations of the rights of the Palestinian people according to the health standards upheld by this organization. The systemic ongoing human rights violations of international humanitarian law is committed by the occupying state. We thank you, Director General, for the report and its content, which highlights the support in technical assistance given to the Palestinian authorities in order to improve quality and free healthcare provision. We are concerned by the procedural and physical restraints which hinder the provision of healthcare in the occupied Palestinian territories, including those which prevent patients and ambulances to access the preferred hospitals in the capital. Ecuador laments the obstacles which cause death, preventable death. It's unacceptable for the permit regime to prevent movement on the part of the Palestinian people, which often prevents people from the Gaza region from receiving necessary medical attention. What is the ability of Palestinian healthcare workers to move dropped in 28%, and we recognize the efforts which have been made by the organization in order to help this take place. We have noticed that 21% of people who are brought in ambulances to with wheelchairs often have to be transferred to other ambulances at the border. We would like to highlight, just as the report says, we have to, given the situation that the health system is facing, given the lack of economic opportunities for its development, the lack of access to basic medicines, the lack of access to drinkable water and health services, is a result of the blockade and the occupation. For these reasons, my delegation fully supports the draft resolution submitted and would like to put its support and sponsorship on record. We think that the report makes very noteworthy and necessary observations on the health situation, and by offering financial and technical assistance and supporting the health system in particularly in order to satisfying the health needs of the Palestinian people, including the Palestinian political prisoners, which are currently in detention centers, necessary. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Ecuador. I recognize the distinguished delegate of Cuba to be followed by Palestine.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. We would like to express our thanks for the submission of the report 70/39 on the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. In this report, it is made clear that the physical and procedural obstacles hinder access of the population to health care in the occupied Palestinian territory. Furthermore, it highlights that the physical obstacles, particularly the separation wall and the checkpoints, prevent patients and health staff and ambulances to have direct access to reference hospitals in East Jerusalem, and this has not changed in 2016. Furthermore, the mental health of the occupied Palestinian population is facing major threats. Oppression, anxiety, and psychological sufferance continue to be ongoing psychological problems due to the occupation which they are submitted to. In this sense, we express our support so that the occupied Syrian Golan population can enjoy their full right to health without any kind of hindrance. Mr. Chairman, Cuba recognizes the actions undertaken by the WHO in order to improve the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory and occupied Syrian Golan. We would like to reiterate our full support for the inalienable right for the Palestinian people to establish a sovereign independent state with Eastern Jerusalem as a capital and with the highest level of human, physical and mental health. We want this to be effective for all of those who are in the occupied territories. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Cuba. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Palestine to be followed by the distinguished delegate of China.
سيد الرئيس
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, may I first commence by thanking Dr. Margaret Chan and her regional office in Cairo and the regional office in Jerusalem, the capital of Palestine. The health situation in Palestine in the year 2017 is not much different from the years before. The Israeli occupation continues to be the main obstacle faced by the political Palestinian health system, where the territories have been dissected, as well as the division by an apartheid wall and the segregation of more than 300,000 Palestinian, the continued unabated settlement activity in the heart of Palestine, the recurrent attacks by settlers, particularly in East Jerusalem and what is called Area C, as well as the continued violation of the rights of Palestinians. However, in spite of all what has said, the health indications in Palestine continue to be the best in the region. Regarding the detainees, the torture has reached more than 400% in 2014. More than 1,500 detainees have declared an open-ended hunger strike, calling upon the Israeli authorities to improve the conditions of their detentions, to grant them their right to health services and health care, to visitation rights, and to bring a halt to administrative detention and the enjoyment of their rights as political prisoners. The Ministry of Health in Palestine calls upon the World Health Organization's General Assembly and the international community in general the following. Firstly, to bring pressure to bear on Israel to lift the siege and blockade imposed on the totality of the Palestinian territories, including occupied Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip. Secondly, cease all settlement activity and cease attacks by settlers, both by which have severe mental, psychological, and physical effects on Palestinian people. Thirdly, cease obstructing the mobility of medical teams, to respect the sanctity of hospitals and health centers, to abide their commitments by the rule of law and human rights and the rights of the child. Fourthly, to compel Israel to accept the demands of the detainees for a humanitarian treatment as stipulated for by the international legal instruments and the Fourth Geneva Convention, to put an end to administrative detention and to cease force-feeding the prisoners who are on hunger strikes. Fifthly, bring an end to the occupation, support the resilience of the Palestinian health system by technical and financial resources to respond to the health needs of the Palestinian people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Palestine. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of China to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Iraq.
Mr. Chair, the delegation of China pays high attention to the report contained in document A70/30 According to the above-mentioned report, the current health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory have improved but are still worrying. Medical institutions are damaged and medical personnel attacked from time to time. Health services are subject to physical and procedural barriers. Water, sanitation, and food security are not guaranteed. China is concerned with this situation. The WHO is actively providing support and technical assistance to the occupied Palestinian territory and the occupied Syrian Golan and has done a great deal to improve the health conditions in the region. China appreciates those efforts and hopes more such efforts by the WHO will follow. China, within the limits of its ability, has long been providing assistance to improve the local health conditions in that region. It is our hope that the parties concerned will take effective measures to bring about tangible improvements to the local health conditions there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of China. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Iraq to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of Iraq, on behalf of the Arab group, is pleased to submit to you draft decision A70/B/Conf1 entitled Health Conditions in the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. Based on the principles enshrined in the Constitution of WHO and reaffirming that health is a universal right for all populations, and in order to implement these principles and so that all peoples in the world can enjoy this right, we feel that we must cooperate in order to remove all barriers preventing health services and health access to the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory. Mr. Chairman, we've examined the report on health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory. We've also examined the recommendations contained in this report. We feel that the Director General should submit a report to the next year's Assembly that details progress made in implementing the previous recommendations, and this based on a field assessment. We should also continue to provide technical assistance and capacity building in a manner that would guarantee healthcare to all segments of the Palestinian society, including detainees and prisoners, in cooperation with the ICRC and the Palestinian Red Crescent. We must also pay attention to the health conditions of the Syrian population in the occupied Syrian Golan. Lastly, this draft decision is a consensus text that must be adopted by consensus in our opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Iraq. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Iran to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Lebanon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the outset, we would like to thank Director General for the continuing efforts to improve health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory. According to the latest WHO report A17/39, the health systems in the occupied Palestinian territory is operating under severe pressure due to shortages in basic supplies and the inherent limitations of occupation or blockade. Widespread damage to infrastructure, including hospitals, clinics, and ambulances, and education, water, and sanitation facilities, has significantly limited access to basic services. According to the report, access to health services is persistently denied, restricted in violation of international law and international humanitarian law by the separation wall and checkpoints. Mr. Chairman, as stipulated in the Constitution of the WHO, the enjoyment of the highest attainable standards of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being without distinctions of race, religion, political belief, economic or social condition. But the Palestinian people for years have faced terrible health conditions, especially in the Gaza Strip, which is under inhuman blockade. As the report clearly indicates, the situation is alarming and restriction on the movement of the people remained, including the blockade on the Gaza strips, the presence of checkpoints and barriers within the West Bank, and the travel permit regimes, all of which are contrary to the WHO objectives and principles. Furthermore, as the report highlighted, the restrictions imposed on the movement of the patients, health staff and goods have hindered the functioning and development of the health system in Palestine. There is no doubt that the worsening condition of the innocent people is caused by inhuman and unlawful continued policy of Israeli regime. The serious health and humanitarian needs of Palestinian prisoners held in the jails of the occupying power are alarming. The WHO should systematically monitor their situation and report to the WHO on a regular basis. According to the latest WHO report, lack of access to timely and adequate medical care and mental health services, both diagnosis and treatments, inadequate nutrition and housing conditions, and denial of family visits and communications are matters of concern. Most unfortunately, the assessment teams did not have access to Palestinian prisoners. We express our deep concern that, as it was the case in the past, according to the latest report, WHO has still no proper access to the occupied Syrian Golan and hence could not provide a report on the prevailing health conditions there. The international community should take urgent and meaningful steps to make the occupying power to lift immediately the obstacles to basic needs of Palestinian people. It is an urgent need to act coherently and collectively to make the occupying power to lift the restrictions on Palestinians, including those related to travel and free access to goods and medical services in the occupied Palestinian territory. Finally, in line with our consistent positions, we express our reservations concerning those parts of the draft decision and of the report contained in the document A17/39 that might be construed as recognition of the Israeli regime. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Iran. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Lebanon to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of Lebanon endorses the statement of Iraq on behalf of the Arab group. We would like to thank the Director General for the report entitled Health Conditions in the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem. We also value the assistance provided by WHO in cooperation with other organizations during 2016, and this assistance has been valuable in helping the Palestinian authorities, including the Ministry of Health, to ease the pressure on the health system. This assistance led to an improvement in the health indicators of the Palestinian people. As such, the organization, WHO, must continue to provide this support and assistance, and in particularly when dealing with NCDs, mental diseases and foodborne diseases, as well as insecurity. This year, the barriers and obstacles listed in the report imposed by Israel as an occupying power on the Palestinian people, such as the separation wall, checkpoints, and the permit regime, to mention but a few, further exacerbates the situation and there's the freedom of movement of health staff, but also of patients, which means a lack of access to health services. The features of this year's report are highlighting the situation of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons. These situations are, needless to say, tragic. Lebanon, as such, endorses the draft decision linked to this item of the agenda. We should like to reaffirm the importance of paragraph 4 of this draft decision that calls on WHO to continue its provision of technical support and assistance to meet the needs of Palestinians and in particular the prisoners and detainees, and also paragraph 6 that highlights the importance of allocating adequate financial and human resources to this end. And obviously the delegation of Lebanon endorsed the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Lebanon. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Pakistan to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Venezuela.
We appreciate the efforts of WHO for improving the health conditions and deliverance of the basic health services in occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan, in the form of tangible projects and programs. We also appreciate the report of Director General on the health condition in the occupied territories and find its recommendations very important, especially those related to reminding Israel of its international commitments of granting free and unhindered access to health care facilities and respecting the sanctity of health infrastructure and paramedical staff. We are deeply concerned over the deteriorating health situation in the occupied state of Palestine, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan due to Israel's occupation. The restriction to the ambulance transport and unnecessary hurdles, damage to the medical infrastructure, access to timely medical care and denial of family visits to the prisoners in Israeli prisons are unlawful Israeli practices that are in violation of international law and basic human rights. The unnecessary physical and technical barriers such as permit regimes created by Israel for accessing the referral hospitals needs to be condemned and actions taken for allowing unhindered access to medical facilities. We deplore that the assessment team was not given access to Palestinian prisoners. The continued Israeli occupation and restrictions on freedom of movement has devastating effects on the economy of the occupied territories, causing aggravated food security problem. According to the Director General's report, 1.6 million Palestinians are experiencing food insecurity, which is an alarmingly high number, indicating an imminent humanitarian crisis. The prevalent psychological, emotional, and mental distress is the outcome of Israeli discriminatory policies and gross human rights abuses committed with full impunity by the occupying forces. Mr. Chair, we believe that no state is above international law and right to health cannot be compromised, and there can be no justification for blocking or hindering the access to health facilities by anyone. We consider that the international community must not shun away from its responsibility of helping the Palestinians in overcoming the grave health challenges. The basic human right to health can be materialized by strengthening the health systems and infrastructure in the occupied territories. The financial and technical support provided by the international community is of pivotal importance, and the decision presented under Agenda Item 19 is implemented in letter and spirit. Mr. Chair, Pakistan lends its full support to the decision presented under Agenda Item 19 and strongly urges the members to support it. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Pakistan. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Venezuela to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Libya.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. The Syrian Republic of Venezuela would like to thank the Secretariat for the report submitted on health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. Furthermore, we would like to express our support for the draft decision submitted, which calls upon the implementation of the standards set by the World Health Organization, where it says that the health of peoples is essential to reach world peace, and access to health is a fundamental human right. We would like to express our strong support for the necessary measures to be taken to allow a contribution to the serious problems caused by the decrease of the human rights situation, the health situation, access to water, the economic crisis, unemployment, the expansion of settlements, the demolition of houses, the collective punishment of civilian populations, the creation of Israeli colonies, and the settlements, and which makes for difficult health situations for the occupied Palestinian territory and the occupied Syrian Golan. Also, we think that the regular access to drinking water, the access of health supplies and ambulances to the West Bank is also necessary. We think that the necessary measures should be taken in order to ensure the health of the Palestinian people, including prisoners, those with disabilities, and those who are injured. Today, more than a million Palestinian civilians need health care. We cannot ensure the guarantee of the most basic human rights for the most vulnerable populations if we don't deal with the injustice of the occupation and war. Health goals will be impossible without reaching peace goals. Without peace, there will be no health. Furthermore, we need to raise awareness among the international community about the health conditions of the Palestinian refugees in their own territory in Syria, Lebanon, and the West Bank, where they live in very difficult conditions in a region which is marked by conflicts and instability. Venezuela ratifies its support for the Palestinian people and the Syrian people in their bid to access vital medicines and healthcare, which is constantly being hindered. In 2016, in Venezuela, we ratified that the situation of the occupied Palestinian territory, including occupied Syrian Golan, was a factor of instability in the region, and we support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Venezuela. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Libya to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Syrian Arab Republic.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the outset, my delegation would like to join others in the group in endorsing the statement by Iraq on behalf of the Arab group. My delegation would also like to thank the African group for its statement delivered by Algeria. We should also like to thank Mrs. Margaret Chan, Director General of WHO, for her excellent report. This report gives an overview of health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. We are deeply concerned with regard to the barriers, the physical, but also the mental barriers that hinder access to health for the Palestinian people. My delegation should like to condemn the treatment of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons, particularly during this period. As you know, many Palestinian prisoners have gone on a hunger strike. We also condemn and deplore all attacks on health facilities and any constraints on ambulances movement that would prevent medicine from reaching those patients that are in dire need. Mr. Chairman, based on the principles upheld by the state of Libya, we strongly support the draft decision in the context of item 19, and we call on all civilized nations who have called once and again for the respect of human rights. So we call on these civilized nations who want to uphold human rights to support this draft decision if they truly want to do so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Libya. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Syrian Arab Republic to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Bolivia.
السيد الرئيس إن الأوضاع
Mr. Chairman, the health conditions in the occupied Syrian Golan are dire. The Syrian population in the occupied Syrian Golan is deprived of health care and basic health services because of the occupying power Israel that prevented the Syrian population from building a single hospital, one hospital in the Syrian Golan. And as such, the population in the Syrian Golan remains without basic health care. In addition to that, the inhumane detention of Syrian prisoners in Israeli prisons who undergo horrible torture to compel them to confess of crimes they did not confess and they did not commit. And I would like to highlight the cause of two Syrian prisoners who are in the Jarboa prison, in addition to Fauzi and others from Rajar village, from the occupied Rajar village in the Syrian Golan. They are used as guinea pigs and experiments for new drugs. We also express our solidarity with the Palestinian prisoners who are on a hunger strike at the moment, and we call for an end to their suffering and to the collective punishment imposed on them by the Israeli authorities. We feel that all of the above is closely linked to health conditions. Environmental and humanitarian disaster will take place in this region, reports indicate, because of the Daidamona reactor, the nuclear reactor, the Israeli nuclear reactor that is about to explode, and because of nuclear waste that have been buried in the Syrian Golan and near Al-Sheikh mountains. These attempts and these burials are undertaken by an Israeli company, and the international community is unaware of these attempts. Also, the Israeli occupying continues to treat the injured amongst the terrorists from Al-Nusra Front and other terrorist groups in Israeli hospitals, and transfers them from the Syrian Golan, the occupied Syrian Golan, to referral Israeli hospitals, treats them, and then they are free to return to the Syrian territories and to conduct terrorist attacks. There is no international accountability for the occupying power Israel. As such, the occupying power Israel continues these inhumane practices and deprives the Syrian population in the occupied Golan of its basic health rights. We call on the international community and on WHO to find an adequate mechanism in order to implement all relevant WHO decisions in this regard, to provide adequate technical and financial assistance to health facilities in the occupied Syrian Golan. We commend the efforts by WHO to send a field mission to the Syrian Golan in order to implement WHA decision 6910, and we deplore the fact that this mission was not able to give a truthful portrayal of the situation in the Syrian Golan, because this mission was only able to visit 3 locations, and because of the many obstacles it was faced with, mainly the lack of disaggregated data for the Arab population and the lack of availability of data in general. And this is mainly due to the fact that Israel imposes its will and its laws on the occupied Syrian Golan and tries to dismiss the identity of the original Syrian population. We call on WHO to undertake a comprehensive field assessment of the barriers and obstacles imposed by the Israeli occupying power on the Syrian population and on their freedom of movement, on their access to health services. So this assessment should be comprehensive, and there should be an assessment of the impact of the radioactive waste buried in the Syrian Golan by the Israeli authorities. We look forward to a serious consideration of all these issues in the next WHA. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from the Syrian Arab Republic. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Bolivia to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Senegal.
Presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. The report from the Director General allows for us to note that the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan, remain problematic, given, among other things, checkpoints, the physical barriers to access, including ambulances which allow for timely medical care. And there has only been slight improvement, and there are many problems with access to drinkable water. In order to ensure maximum level of health care and water, this is not just a question of law, but rather human rights. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, we would like to say that Bolivia supports the draft resolution submitted by the countries for the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Bolivia. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Senegal to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much, Chair. My delegation aligns itself with the statement made by Algeria on behalf of the African region. And would like to, having congratulated you on your election, as also the members of your bureau, we would like wish every success for our work here. My delegation takes notes of the report from the Director General and document A70/39, as well as informations which are particularly concerning contained. This highlights the material, physical and procedural difficulties in access to healthcare. By way of recommendations that are made, my delegation believes that number 1, 6 and 8 on the implementation of other recommendations deserve particular attention. Also, we would like to welcome the efforts, the very laudable efforts by the WHO to alleviate the suffering of the populations. Senegal Chair reaffirms its commitment to the principles and values of equity and justice, and as an essential pillar to ensure an inclusive and coherent, consistent healthcare system. Thus, a paradigm shift is required without politicization when we consider this question and put the debate into its social context to then respect healthcare as a collective and universal good, as well as the full enjoyment of a better level of health as in various international provisions, which we support voluntarily, and also as we term the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the SDGs, and the WHO Constitution. The right to health should not be hindered, restricted, or attacked, but should be promoted and encouraged so that our common goals can be achieved: universal health coverage and the sustainable development. Health is a duty and a right, and not a luxury. Like what has happened, people have said before, Chair, we fully support the draft resolution in document A70B Conf 1 and would like to see it adopted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Senegal. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Saudi Arabia to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Bahrain.
May the peace and grace of God be upon you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having given me the floor. The report of WHO on health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and the occupied Syrian Golan, sheds light on the suffering of the Palestinian people and their quest to access health services. We insist upon the right of all to receive medical care and benefit from health services because there are thousands of sick people in refugee camps as well as in prisons and detention centers who are not able to benefit from health care because of blockades or because of severe poverty or because of obstacles to circulation because of Israeli permits and other measures. There are also attacks on health personnel and ambulances. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia supports the draft decision. We call upon WHO and the other agencies of the UN and the international community to support the draft decision and not to politicize it. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Saudi Arabia. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Bahrain to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The delegation of Bahrain would like to echo what was said by the Republic of Iraq on behalf of the Arab group. My delegation read the report of the Director General on the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. We would like to commend the efforts which were deployed to put in place this report and the field visits. At the same time, we hope that the next reports will be more successful in providing an image of what the Palestinians are suffering from. The welfare of the Palestinian people is held hostage by the measures implemented by Israel, which constitute a violation of humanitarian law, such as limiting their circulation and the wall of separation and the blockade on Gaza. All of these prevent people accessing health care in Gaza especially, and also in prisons and detention centers. There's also a destruction of the health infrastructure, especially in the context of a growing population, which puts pressure on the means and resources available. This leads to more suffering for the Palestinian people. In these conditions, the delegation of my country insists upon the need to continue to provide technical support and build capacity and increase human resources in the medical field in order to meet the dire humanitarian needs. We support the draft decision being presented on behalf of a number of countries, and we would also like to join the list of sponsors of this draft decision, and we call upon the August committee to adopt the draft decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Bahrain. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Indonesia to be followed by the distinguished delegate of the Maldives.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, on behalf of the delegation of Indonesia, I would like to congratulate to you, Mr. Chairman, as the chairman of this committee. I also congratulate all elected members of the Bureau. Mr. Chairman, Indonesia aligns itself with the statement made by the NEM and the OIC and co-sponsor the draft resolution on the health condition in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. My delegation thanks the WHO Secretariat in preparing the report on health condition in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and the occupied Syrian Golan. We are of the view that the occupation is not only illegal, but it has also proven to be very costly for the fulfillment of basic human rights in the OPT, such as guaranteeing the access to health for the whole population. Based on the recent WHO report, the dire condition in the OPT seems to be worsening, as the OPT is also currently facing severe shortage in the term of power and fuel. Without sufficient supply, the existing hospital and basic health services are facing the threat of being unoperational or put into complete stop. The consequences can thus be foreseen. Men, women, elder people, and children, particularly newborn, will be deeply affected by such condition. The denying of access to exit and the to enter Gaza has also made matters worse, and more people are now exposed to inadequate health service standards. In addition, from the WHO report in March 2017, the Gaza, Rafah, and Erez region are three of the regions that were heavily affected. One such note, through this assembly, we would like to reiterate the importance of partnering with the related agency to find a workable solution. Demand and ease of access to enter of exit for those who are medically in need. And above all, to end the occupation. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Indonesia. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of the Maldives to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Egypt.
Thank you, Chair. The Maldives wishes to thank you for convening this meeting under Agenda Item 19. My delegation welcomes the Director General's report following the adoption of Decision WHA 69-10/2016, requesting the Director General to report and make practical recommendations on the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territories. The Maldives strongly condemns the recent decision by the occupying power to restrict access to health services. Maldives is greatly concerned by the findings of the validation study on infant deaths in Gaza. Mr. Chair, the Maldives commends the WHO in its work to support the Palestinian Ministry of Health to enhance access to high-quality, safe healthcare and medical services, enhancing service delivery and information and research, and sustainable health financing, on which it collaborates with the World Bank to facilitate dialogue on universal health coverage. The Maldives welcomes the support to the family practice model by the Palestinian Ministry of Health and the WHO Secretariat, which translated into the implementation of training initiatives in 3 district centers in 2016. Mr. Chair, my delegation also praises the Palestinian Water Authority for the development of a comprehensive medium and long-term strategy to improve the piped water supply in the Gaza Strip, which the first of 3 planned seawater desalination plants being finalized. Mr. Chair, the Maldives stands ready to support the collective efforts of the international community in securing a more peaceful and prosperous future for our brothers and sisters living in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and the occupied Syrian Golan. Indeed, peace in the region can only be achieved through political will, international cooperation, and tangible actions. The Maldives is a firm supporter of the two-state solution, recognizing the sovereign and independent state of Palestine based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. In conclusion, my delegation wishes WHO every success in implementing the recommendations stated in the Director General's report. The right to life in peace and the right to health care is as much a right for everyone in these conflicts as it is for each one of us here. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of the Maldives. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Egypt to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Nicaragua.
Egypt welcomed the report of the Director General and the 10 recommendations contained therein. We would like, however, to highlight the following issues. The report fell short addressing sustainable development goals as the universal overarching framework for development. We urge the Secretariat to pay due attention to this issue in full cooperation with Palestinian authorities and other UN agencies and report on possible impediments to attain these goals and practical steps to mitigate current obstacles. Since local health authorities are the first line of defense against public health hazards, special attention should be given to building the core public health capacities in Palestine. And we call upon the Secretariat to expedite finalization and operationalization of the 3-year action plan specifically tailored in this connection to the context in Palestine. We welcome the outcome of the field assessment of the health conditions in Palestine and Syrian Golan, consistent with decision of the Assembly 69, and we highly appreciate the DG efforts for the multidisciplinary approach used to conduct this assessment. In this regard, we would like to underline the following. With regard to Palestine, the field assessment has shown the necessity to tailor all aspects of health-related assistance to the fact that 40% of Palestinians are aged from 0 to 14 years, as one of the youngest populations in the region. Indeed, we concur with the assessment that Palestine is currently experiencing a demographic and epidemiological transition, which in our view could have far-reaching repercussions. While evident improvement was underlined in some health-related indicators since 2005, we would like to express our serious concern over the deteriorating conditions in the Gaza Strip, indicated, for example, by the lack of decrease in neonatal mortality levels. We are concerned as well by the decrease in the permit approval rates for patients and their companions in the Gaza Strip, which dropped in 4 years from 92% to 62%, aggravating the burden of morbidity and mortality. Water quality in the Gaza Strip in particular is currently at crisis levels with rising bacteriological and pesticide concentrations. Accessibility to East Jerusalem referral medical centers should be allowed at all times to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and obstacles against recruitment of health staff and personnel to East Jerusalem hospitals for special training should be removed. As a co-sponsor of Security Council Resolution 2286, we have further concerns about restrictions to ambulance transport of patients and delays at checkpoints and damage to health infrastructure. Statistics has shown that 91% of patient transport through checkpoints were back-to-back transfers, 9% of direct entry. We strongly concur with recommendation 8 of the DG report, and we expect full adherence to this issue. Mr. Chairman, the situation of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons deserves particular attention. More than 1,300 of them began a hunger strike since 17th of April this year. WHO office in Palestine should have an immediate access to Israeli prisons to independently validate their health conditions. With regard to Syria, we take note of the field assessment of the health condition in the occupied Syrian Golan, and we invite the Secretariat to take the necessary measures to collate the required data to reach an objective assessment. Finally, Mr. Chairman, Egypt, as well as other countries, would like to propose for the consideration of the committee a decision point contained in document A70 and call upon interested delegations to join as co-sponsors and vote favorably for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Egypt. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Nicaragua, to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Qatar.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. The delegation of Nicaragua would like to put on record its desire to support this resolution A70B/Com.1 entitled Health Conditions in the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. We expressed that we wanted to support this to the office, but since the deadline had passed, we said that we had to say it in the plenary. So we would like to say that we co-sponsored this resolution, which we hope can be approved by consensus. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Nicaragua. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Qatar, to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Jordan.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Mr. Chairman, the state of Qatar supports the report in document 39, and we would like to join the sponsors of the draft decision. The 10 recommendations in the report reflect the conditions of those most in need, those with special needs, in addition to other segments of society with a big need for essential health care. We thank the organization and commend its efforts. And we would like to say that despite the conditions, we would like to commend the high professionalism and improvements which were attained by the Palestinian Ministry of Health, which is evident in the health indicators displayed in the report. And we all commit professionally and morally to support the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Qatar. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Jordan, to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Sudan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Jordan welcomes the Director General's report on the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. We also welcome WHO's support and technical assistance to the Palestinian authorities and the Ministry of Health in all areas. We are concerned, however, by some of the reported findings, namely with regard to the following: continued physical and procedural barriers restricting access to health care in the occupied Palestinian territory, restrictions to ambulance transport of patients with delays at checkpoints, UNRWA's reports on damage to and incursions into clinics, and the Palestinian Red Crescent Society's reports of episodes of attacks on ambulances as well as of attacks on staff on a regular basis, the physical well-being of Palestinian security detainees and prisoners held in Israeli prisons, which include lack of access to timely and adequate medical care and mental health services, inadequate nutrition and housing conditions, and denial of family visits and communications. We welcome the DG's 10 recommendations presented in this report for improving health conditions and in the occupied Palestinian territory, particularly 1, 6, and 9. We also look forward for the practical recommendations for improving the health conditions in the occupied Syrian Golan that are expected to be developed. We associate ourselves with the statement of the Arab group and reiterate the need to continue to provide technical support and capacity building in the field of health to ensure the assurance of health care for the Palestinian people, including prisoners and detainees, in cooperation with the International Red Cross, as well as assistance of the same people in the occupied Golan. We support the draft decision entitled Health Conditions in the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan, and call on others to equally do so and vote in its favor. We also stress the need for the Director General to report next year on the progress made in the implementation of the recommendations contained in this year's report. Finally, my delegation would like to express its gratitude to Dr. Margaret Chan for her leadership of the WHO during her tenure and commend her for all her efforts and commitment to improve the health of all peoples around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Jordan. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Sudan, to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Morocco.
Mr. Chairman, we all know about the terrible conditions in the occupied Palestinian territories. We're not talking about a political issue. We're talking about the suffering of people, of mothers and their children, and the high mortality rate. People are not able to enjoy the simple conditions of a good life. Children sometimes see their mothers die because there isn't any medicine or there is not adequate food. If this child were given a choice, he would have done anything to provide a dignified life for his mother, and everything should be done to remove all obstacles to a healthy life. We support the draft decision presented by Iraq. We want there to be a stop to torturing prisoners, to attacking hospitals, and many other things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Sudan. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Morocco, to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Zimbabwe.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we would like to thank the Director General on the comprehensive report, which reflects the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territories. We would also like to thank the other UN agencies and parties who have deployed efforts, and we would like to support the draft decision related to this item on the agenda. We also support the recommendations in the report, and we call for the removal of all obstacles preventing the Palestinians from receiving adequate health care. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Morocco. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Zimbabwe, to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Bangladesh.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me to congratulate you on the manner in which you have been conducting the business of this committee. Let me also take this opportunity to commend the Secretariat for this report and for the work it has carried out in keeping with the demands of Resolution WHA 6910. The field assessments carried out by the Secretariat point to a very dire situation within the Palestinian territory. We note with concern the physical and procedural barriers that have restricted access to health care in the occupied Palestinian territory. Even more worrying is the restriction to patients, medical health personnel, and ambulances to directly access hospitals in East Jerusalem. Furthermore, Zimbabwe is concerned with the quantity and quality of water in the Palestinian territory, which is said to be at crisis level due to population growth, infrastructure damage, and the blockade. The environmental and health hazards that come with such a challenge cannot be overemphasized. Chairperson, it is disturbing to learn that the WHO field assessment team was not allowed access to the prisons and that there was no proper access to the Syrian Golan. We therefore call on the responsible authorities to open up to the WHO team in order to ensure a well-balanced field assessment. It is in this regard that we regret the hunger strikes by the prisoners, call for the enjoyment of their basic rights as political prisoners. Chairperson, the nexus between SDG 3 and this whole process is self-evident. We cannot ensure access to health for all if we flagrantly disregard the lives and well-being of the people of Palestine by putting physical and procedural barriers that restrict access to health care. Therefore, we call on the responsible authorities to not only be seen to talk about SDGs, but to walk the talk in global solidarity. Zimbabwe notes the report by the Secretariat and urges the WHO to continue with its technical assistance to meet the needs of the Palestinian people. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Zimbabwe. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Bangladesh. Following afterwards will be the distinguished delegate of Israel.
This delegation thank the Director General for the all-important report. We recognize the importance of extending healthcare and medical services as well as technical assistance in the occupied Palestinian territory. We appreciate WHO's efforts in this regard, including supporting projects and assisting in the development of national strategies on different components of health services. We strongly believe that the Israeli occupying forces are a major hindrance in the improvement of health status in the occupied Palestinian territory. Mr. Chairman, health is a basic human right and we have committed to ensure health and well-being for all in the 2030 agenda, leaving no one behind. In this respect, we request WHO to enhance work in the occupied Palestinian territory in a manner so that adequate healthcare and medical services can be freely accessed by all Palestinian people, including the prisoners and detainees. We also urge the Israeli Authority to adhere to the basic human rights of Palestinian people. In line with the recommendation 1, 6 and 9 of this report, Israeli authorities should ensure that healthcare workers have unhindered access to workplace, healthcare personnel, logistics, to have free access to the patients and healthcare institutions. We also like to see an end to the illegal occupation of Israeli forces as soon as possible. Finally, we support the draft decision proposed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Bangladesh. I now recognize the distinguished delegate from Israel to be followed by the distinguished delegate of the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the past 3 months, Director General Dr. Chan tried to depoliticize the agenda of the WHO by erasing this annual decision which singles out one country and one country only, the State of Israel. We responded positively to her initiative and fully engaged with the assessment team that was sent to the Palestinian territories. In order to show goodwill and facilitate a comprehensive report and a short technical decision to be adopted by consensus, we agreed to the Director General's request for the first time ever to conduct a field assessment of health conditions in the Golan Heights. However, the Palestinians, not surprisingly, compromised the technical decision proposed by Director General Chan with politicized language and controversial issues. This is why we are gathered here yet again, and for the second time today, to go through the shameful ritual of misusing a professional UN platform to serve political interests and to witness this theater of the absurd, glorifying the bias against Israel. As for the part in the DG's original comprehensive report dealing with the Golan Heights, it was blocked from publication because of the Syrian pressure. Its conclusions shed a positive light on Israel's excellent health services in the Golan and Israel's medical treatment of injured Syrian civilians fleeing from the Syrian bloodshed. The WHO, rather than standing up to the brutal regime which massacres its own people, decided to hide this report from the public eye, to change its own report and to omit completely the practical recommendations which it presented. Israel has made many reservations regarding assessment reports over the years, but these were never raised as an obstacle to the publication of any report. Let me be clear, the discussion here today is not about health. If it were about improving the health conditions of the Palestinian people, we would have focused on the WHO's recommendations and not waste the organization's valuable resources on this cynical discussion. Enough is enough. Let's bring sanity back to this organization for the benefit of all. Let's deal with the real health and humanitarian emergencies in our region and elsewhere in the world. Mr. Chairman, Israel unequivocally rejects this draft decision and calls for a roll call vote. I thank beforehand the member states who will join us in rejecting this decision. I deeply regret the decision of member states to support the decision, for this sends a message to the Palestinians, the Syrians and others that they can turn the WHO into their own playground. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Israel. I now call upon the distinguished delegate of the United States of America to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Australia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the World Health Assembly Agenda Item 19, titled Health Conditions in the Occupied Palestinian Territories, we take note of the changed approach from the decision adopted last year and believe it represents important, although incomplete, progress toward our shared objective of a World Health Assembly focused purely on public health. The United States has long advocated depoliticizing this agenda item on which we have already spent too much time, and we deeply appreciate the efforts of Director General Chan in this regard, as well as the flexibility and constructive spirit with which key stakeholders have engaged the WHO Secretariat. In particular, we commend Israel's acceptance of a WHO field assessment of health conditions in the Golan earlier this year and look forward to the release of the field assessment report. Unfortunately, we are unable to support the text before us, which perpetuates this politicized agenda item in inviting the Director General to prepare a report for the 71st Assembly. The United States remains concerned about conditions in the locations addressed by this text, particularly in Gaza, and we will continue to work with Israel, the Palestinians, and others to advance the needs of the Palestinian people through our development and humanitarian assistance programs. But because we cannot support the text as proposed, we are opposed to adoption of this decision and support Israel's call for a vote. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of the United States of America. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Australia to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Tunisia.
Australia appreciates the personal efforts of the Director General to broker a consensus on this difficult issue, as well as the progress made by all parties to reach closer agreement. Evidence-based and technical approaches to addressing complex health challenges are and should continue to always be the foundation for the WHO's work. This should not be politicised. Australia remains a strong supporter of a negotiated two-state solution to the conflict between Israel and the Palestinian territories. We are focused on supporting initiatives which reflect and maintain progress towards a negotiated settlement so that Israel and a future Palestinian state may exist side by side in peace and security. Australia has consistently not supported one-sided resolutions targeting Israel in multilateral fora. We do not consider these bring the parties closer to a negotiated settlement. Australia is a long-standing and substantial supporter of the Palestinian people through our aid program. We continue to call on all parties to take the courageous decisions needed to return to and progress negotiations. Once again, Australia appreciates and applauds Dr. Chan's efforts for many years on this topic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Australia. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Tunisia.
Sayyidi Rais. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of my country should like to associate itself with the statement of Iraq and Algeria. We, at the same time, reiterate the importance of affording the citizens of the occupied Palestinian territories and the occupied Syrian Golan of the right to health services. Therefore, we have added ourselves to the list of co-sponsors of this draft decision. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Tunisia. A representative from the UNRWA has requested to take the floor. I yield the floor to that representative at the time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honorable delegates, ladies and gentlemen, UNRWA appreciates the World Health Assembly to discuss the health of occupied Palestinian territory. This is because 50% of 4.8 million people living in the occupied Palestinian territory are Palestinian refugees. As health of the people living in occupied Palestinian territory is dire, the health of Palestinian refugees remains dire. The first World Health Assembly took place in 1948. In the same year, the history of Palestinian refugees' plight, or Nakba, started. Today, Palestine refugees remain refugees, reaching to 5.8 million. This is the single largest refugee population in the world. UNRWA provides primary health care services to Palestinian refugees. In the occupied Palestine territory, we have 65 health centers, caring for 5 million consultations every year. We highly appreciate in this regard the support from the host countries, donors, and the international partners. We UNRWA would like to extend our sincere appreciation to Dr. Margaret Chan for her continued support. UNRWA's health reform is making progress. Thanks again to the international partners and host countries, particularly the Palestinian Ministry of Health. In all 65 health centers in the occupied Palestinian territory, we introduced person-centered family medicine approach called Family Health Team. We introduced electronic medical records, or e-health, as well. Such reform already produced gains in efficiency of service delivery, patient satisfaction, and care quality. Still, the absence of the just and durable solution and the consequences of continued hardship affect the physical, social, and the mental health of Palestinian refugees. UNRWA's study on the infant mortality rate among Palestinian refugees in Gaza indicates its long-standing decline might have been halted. Access to health, which is a fundamental human right, is compromised. According to the latest WHO report from Gaza, only 55% of application of patients seeking hospital services outside Gaza was approved. It's vital for the international community to continue to monitor and discuss with a sense of urgency the health condition in the occupied Palestinian territory, including Palestinian refugees. Thank you very much.
We thank the representative from UNRWA for his intervention. The Director General may wish to make some remarks.
Good afternoon. Oh no, somebody wants to speak. Chair.
The distinguished delegate of Oman.
سعادة الرئيس والوفود. Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates, Director General, I'm honored to associate myself with the statement of the Arab Group and all those who want to be fair to the Palestinian people with the minimum, which is health care. It is indubitable that the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories are deteriorating rapidly. We attend this yearly meeting and we hear many statements. However, the Palestinian people have reached a dismal situation. In every session of the General Assembly, we promise ourselves to work harder for the enjoyment of all the rights to all the citizens of the world who suffer from wars and hostilities. However, the occupation in Palestine has led to many catastrophes. This is why we have to double our effort to help resolve this situation in a serious manner. We do not feel there is any politicization considering primordial questions such as the question of Palestine. This is a request by all peace-loving countries to encourage all parties to reach a lasting, fair and just resolution to the Palestinian question that would guarantee the living in peace and security with health services provided to all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Oman. Director General, you may now wish to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to all honorable ministers and ambassadors and distinguished delegates. Let me take the floor to make a few comments. Chair, I have been following the discussion very closely, and I want to thank all delegations for their views. And as we all know, these views are strongly held. The issue before us, ladies and gentlemen, has a long history of appearing on World Health Assembly agendas. I was reminded by people who have been here longer than me, and the record shows that it dated back to 1968. Over all these years, it has consistently been one of the most complex and contentious issues you discuss. My job as your Director General is to facilitate a smooth World Health Assembly and to help, when asked, to overcome polarizing situations. This means your DG me have to work with all interested parties in strict compliance with my oath of office, which obliges me to be impartial, fair, objective, and transparent. This year, for the first time for decades, WHO was able to send its first mission to assess the health conditions in occupied Syrian Golan. I thank Israel for its facilitation. The report that we have drafted after the field visit is a good first step, but the report is incomplete. As we all know, health conditions are shaped by much more than just simple access to health services. More work, more research need to be done to gather more information. We cannot rely on hearsay. It is incumbent upon WHO as a technical agency to get the right information before I present to my member states. What I'm saying is that, as I make clear in paragraph 11 and paragraph 28 of A70/39, we need to do more work. After more work, I will present a comprehensive report to my member states, but not at this stage because it is incomplete. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Director General. Let us now consider the draft decision contained in document A70/B/CONF. Paper number R/1. The Secretariat has informed me that the following delegations have requested that they be included in the list of co-sponsors of the draft decision. They are Mauritania and Namibia.
tell them we will take their names and include.
Are these indications that you would wish to co-sponsor? The names are being taken. So as we have the record accurately made, Nicaragua, Angola, Jordan, Qatar, Bangladesh, Somalia, and Lebanon.
Pakistan is here.
Pakistan, Oman. The names, there are some names that are already noted on the list.
Afghanistan, Chad, Djibouti, and Libya.
I've been advised by the Secretariat that all the names are noted. There has been a proposal from the distinguished delegates of Israel and the United States to proceed to a recorded vote. I shall give the floor to the legal counsel to advise us on how to proceed. Mr. Walton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A vote has been called on the proposal to adopt the draft decision contained in Conference Paper 1, and a request has been made for the vote to be recorded, which means we will proceed by way of a roll call vote. In accordance with Rule 72 of our Rules of Procedure, the roll call must be taken in the English or French alphabetical order of the names of the members in alternate years, and this year the roll call will be taken in English. The name of the member to vote first is to be determined by lot, and in a few moments the chairman will draw the lot by lot the letter which we will use to determine the start of the roll call. And the Secretariat will then call delegations starting from that letter in the English alphabetical order. As is customary, when delegations are called, they should reply yes if they wish to vote in favor of adopting the draft decision. Delegations should reply no if they wish to vote against adopting the draft decision. And they should declare abstention if they wish to abstain. When your name is called, please ensure that you wait until the red light comes on the microphone before indicating your vote, otherwise we may not hear you. Once the Secretariat has read each delegation's name once, the names of those delegations that did not respond will be read a second time in order to give them an opportunity to cast their vote if they wish to do so. In accordance with Rule 73, the vote of each member participating in the roll call will be inserted into the record of the meeting. After all the members entitled to vote and wishing to do so have voted or abstained, the chairman will declare the vote closed and the votes will be counted. Once that has been done, the chairman will announce the result of the vote. Before proceeding, I will read the names of those members which are not represented at the Assembly, as well as those members whose voting privileges have been suspended. They are as follows: Central African Republic, Comoros, Guinea-Bissau, Federated States of Micronesia, Niue, Papua New Guinea, and Ukraine. The names of these members will not therefore be called in the roll call. The number of members entitled to vote in this vote is accordingly 187. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Legal Counsel. I should like to remind all delegations that proceedings may be interrupted only for a point of order connected to the actual conduct of the vote. Any such points of order or other questions or concerns related to the conduct of the vote must be raised before the results of the vote are announced. Before we proceed any further, are there any questions related to the conduct of the vote? There be no questions. I shall now proceed with drawing a letter from the bag in order to determine the member state from which member states will be called to vote. It's the letter I.
Declare the vote open. I shall
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now start the roll call. Iceland.
I declare the vote open. I shall therefore ask the Secretariat to read the names of member states in English alphabetical order, starting with Iceland.
Iceland. Iceland absent. We couldn't hear you. Iceland?
Yeah, now. Okay.
Abstention. Iceland abstention. India? India absent. Indonesia? Indonesia, yes. Islamic Republic of Iran?
Yes.
Islamic Republic of Iran, yes. Iraq?
Iraq, yes.
Iraq, yes. Ireland?
Yes.
Ireland, yes. Israel? Israel, no. Italy?
Yes.
Italy, yes. Jamaica?
Yes.
Jamaica, yes. Japan? Japan?
Yes.
And yes. Jordan? Jordan, yes. Kazakhstan?
Yes.
Kazakhstan, yes. Kenya? Kenya? Kenya, absent. Kiribati? Kiribati? Kiribati, absent. Kuwait?
Yes.
Kuwait, yes. Kyrgyzstan? Kyrgyzstan? Okay. I'm sorry. Kyrgyzstan? Do you vote yes or no? Kyrgyzstan absent. Lao People's Democratic Republic. Lao People's Democratic Republic.
I want to turn off.
Lao People's Democratic Republic absent. Latvia. Latvia.
Latvia abstention.
Latvia abstention. Lebanon.
Lebanon, yes.
Lebanon, yes. Lesotho.
Yes.
Lesotho, yes. Liberia. Liberia. Liberia absent. Libya.
Do you read me?
Yes.
Libya, yes.
Libya, yes. Lithuania.
Yes.
Lithuania. Lithuania, yes. Luxembourg.
Yes.
Luxembourg, yes. Madagascar. Madagascar. Absent. No, Madagascar. I couldn't hear you. Madagascar absent. Malawi.
Abstention.
Malawi abstention. Malaysia.
Malaysia, yes.
Malaysia, yes. Maldives.
Maldives, yes.
Maldives, yes. Mali. Mali. Mali absent. Malta.
Malta, yes.
Malta, yes. Marshall Islands. Marshall Islands. Marshall Islands absent. Mauritania. Mauritania.
موريتانيا نعم.
Mauritania, yes.
Yes.
Mauritius. Mauritius. Mauritius absent. Mexico.
Abstention.
Mexico abstention. Monaco.
Monaco, oui.
Monaco, yes. Mongolia. Mongolia, yes. Montenegro.
Yes.
Montenegro, yes. Morocco.
المغرب نعم.
Yes.
Mozambique.
Yes.
Mozambique, yes. Myanmar. Myanmar. Myanmar absent. Namibia.
Namibia, yes.
Namibia, yes. Nauru. Nauru. Nauru absent. Nepal. Nepal. Nepal absent. Netherlands.
Yes.
Netherlands, yes. New Zealand.
Abstention.
New Zealand abstention. Nicaragua.
Sí.
Nicaragua, yes. Niger. Niger. Niger absent. Nigeria. Nigeria. Nigeria, yes. Norway.
Yes.
Norway, yes. Oman.
No.
Oman, yes. Pakistan.
Pakistan, yes.
Pakistan, yes. Palau. Palau. Palau absent. Panama. Panama abstention. Paraguay. Paraguay. Paraguay absent. Peru. Peru.
Sí.
Peru, yes. Philippines. Philippines.
Yes.
Philippines, yes. Poland. Poland. Poland, yes. Portugal.
Yes.
Portugal, yes. Qatar?
Qatar, yes.
Qatar, yes. Republic of Korea?
Yes.
Republic of Korea, yes. Republic of Moldova? Republic of Moldova, yes. Romania? Romania, yes. Russian Federation?
Россия, да.
Russian
Yes.
Federation, yes. Rwanda? Rwanda? Rwanda absent. St. Kitts and Nevis? St. Kitts and Nevis abstention. St. Lucia? St. Lucia? St. Lucia absent. St. Vincent and the Grenadines? St. Vincent and the Grenadines? St. Vincent and the Grenadines absent. Samoa? Samoa? Samoa absent. San Marino? San Marino? San Marino absent. Tome and Principe? Sao Tome and Principe? Sao Tome and Principe absent. Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia, yes. Senegal? Senegal?
Senegal, yes.
Senegal, yes. Serbia?
Yes.
Serbia, yes. Seychelles?
Yes.
Seychelles, yes. Sierra Leone? Sierra Leone? Sierra Leone, absent. Singapore?
Singapore, yes.
Singapore, yes. Slovakia?
Slovakia, yes.
Slovakia, yes. Slovenia?
Slovenia, yes.
Slovenia, yes. Solomon Islands? Solomon Islands? Solomon Islands, absent. Somalia?
Yes.
Somalia, yes. South Africa?
South Africa, yes.
South Africa, yes. Sudan? South Sudan? South Sudan, absent. Spain?
Sí.
Spain, yes. Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka, yes.
Sri Lanka, yes. Sudan?
Sudan, yes.
Sudan, yes. Suriname? Suriname? Suriname, absent. Swaziland? Swaziland? Swaziland, absent. Sweden?
Sweden, yes.
Sweden, yes. Switzerland?
Suisse, oui.
Switzerland, yes. Syrian Republic?
Naam.
Syrian Arab Republic, yes. Tajikistan? Tajikistan? Tajikistan, absent. Thailand?
Thailand, yes.
Thailand, yes. The former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia? The former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia? Absent. Timor-Leste?
Abstain.
Timor-Leste, abstention. Togo? Togo?
No.
Togo?
No.
Togo, no. Tonga? Tonga? Tonga, absent. Trinidad and Tobago? Trinidad and Tobago? Absent. Tunisia?
Tunis, naam.
Tunisia, yes. Turkey?
Turkey, yes.
Turkey, yes. Turkmenistan? Turkmenistan? Turkmenistan, absent. Tuvalu?
Abstention.
Tuvalu, abstention. Uganda? Uganda. Uganda absent. United Arab Emirates.
Yes.
United Arab Emirates, yes. United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
No.
United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, no. United Republic of Tanzania. United Republic of Tanzania, absent. United States of America.
States of America, no.
United States of America, no. Uruguay.
Uruguay, sí.
Uruguay, yes. Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan, absent. Vanuatu. Vanuatu. Vanuatu, absent. Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
Sí.
Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, yes. Vietnam.
Vietnam, yes.
Vietnam, yes. Yemen.
Yemen.
Yemen, yes. Zambia. Zambia. Zambia, absent. Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe, yes.
Zimbabwe, yes. Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, yes.
Afghanistan, yes. Albania. Albania. Albania, absent. Algeria.
Algeria, yes.
Algeria, yes. Andorra. Andorra.
Angola, yes.
Andorra. Andorra, absent. Angola.
Now it's Angola. Okay, Angola, yes.
Angola, yes. Antigua and Barbuda.
Abstention.
Antigua and Barbuda, abstention. Argentina.
Argentina, sí.
Argentina, yes. Armenia.
Armenia, abstention.
Armenia, abstention. Australia.
No.
Australia, no. Austria.
Yes.
Austria, yes. Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan, yes.
Azerbaijan, yes. Bahamas. Bahamas. Bahamas, absent. Bahrain. Bahrain.
Bahrain, yes.
Bahrain, yes. Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, yes.
Bangladesh, yes. Barbados. Barbados. Barbados, absent. Belarus. Belarus.
Беларусь голосует «да».
Belarus, yes. Belgium.
Belgium, yes.
Belgium, yes. Belize. Belize. Belize, absent. Benin.
Benin, oui.
Benin, yes. Bhutan. Bhutan.
Bhutan, yes.
Bhutan, yes. Plurinational state of Bolivia.
Bolivia, sí.
Yes. Bolivia, yes. Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina, absent. Botswana.
Botswana, yes.
Botswana, yes. Brazil.
Brazil, yes.
Brazil, yes. Brunei Darussalam.
Brunei Darussalam, yes.
Brunei Darussalam, yes. Bulgaria.
Abstention.
Bulgaria, abstention. Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, absent. Burundi. Burundi. Burundi, absent. Cabo Verde. Cabo Verde, absent. Cambodia. Cambodia. Cambodia, absent. Cameroon. Cameroon. Cameroon, absent. Canada. Canada.
No.
Canada, no. Chad.
Yes.
Chad, yes. Chile.
Chile, sí.
Chile, yes. China.
China, yes.
China, yes. Colombia.
Colombia, abstention.
Colombia, abstention. Congo. Congo. Congo, absent. Cook Islands. Cook Islands. Cook Islands, absent. Costa Rica.
Costa Rica, sí.
Costa Rica, yes. Côte d'Ivoire.
Côte d'Ivoire, abstention.
Côte d'Ivoire, abstention. Croatia. Croatia.
Croatia, abstention.
Croatia, abstention. Cuba.
Sí.
Cuba, yes. Cyprus.
Cyprus, yes.
Cyprus, yes. Czech Republic.
Yes.
Czech Republic, yes. Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Absent. Democratic Republic of the Congo. Democratic Republic of the Congo, yes. Abstention. Democratic Republic of the Congo, abstention. Denmark.
Denmark, yes.
Denmark, yes. Djibouti.
Djibouti, yes.
Djibouti, yes. Dominica. Dominica. Dominica, absent. Dominican Republic.
Dominican Republic, abstention.
Dominican Republic, abstention. Ecuador.
Ecuador, sí.
Ecuador, yes. Egypt.
Yes.
Egypt, yes. El Salvador.
El Salvador, sí.
El Salvador, yes. Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea. Absent. Equatorial Guinea, absent. Eritrea. Eritrea. Eritrea, absent. Estonia.
Estonia, yes.
Estonia, yes. Ethiopia. Ethiopia, absent. Fiji. Fiji, absent. Finland.
Finland, yes.
Finland, yes. France. France, yes. Gabon.
Abstention.
Gabon, abstention. Gambia. Gambia. Gambia, absent. Georgia. Georgia. Georgia, absent. Germany.
Germany, yes.
Germany, yes. Ghana. Ghana. Ghana, absent. Greece.
Yes.
Greece, yes. Grenada. Grenada. Grenada, absent. Grenada, absent. Guatemala.
Guatemala, no.
Guatemala, no. Guinea.
Guinea, oui.
Guinea, yes. Guyana. Guyana. Guyana, absent. Haiti. Haiti.
Abstention.
Abstention. Haiti, abstention. Honduras.
Abstention.
Honduras, abstention. Hungary.
Hungary, abstention.
Hungary, abstention. Now I'm going to read again the names of the countries who were absent. Albania. I start from Iceland again, okay. India. Kenya. Kiribati, Kyrgyzstan, Lao People's Democratic Republic, Liberia, Madagascar, Mali, Marshall Islands, Mauritius, Myanmar, Nauru, Nepal, Niger, Palau, Paraguay, Rwanda, Saint Lucia, Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, Samoa, San Marino, Sao Tome and Principe, Sierra Leone, Solomon Islands, South Sudan, Suriname, Swaziland, Tajikistan, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Tonga, Trinidad and Tobago, Turkmenistan, Uganda, United Republic of Tanzania, Uzbekistan, Vanuatu, Zambia, Albania, Andorra, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cabo Verde, Cambodia, Cameroon, Congo, Cook Islands, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Dominica, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Fiji, Gambia, Georgia, Ghana, Grenada, Guyana. The list is complete.
May I, at this time, check that all delegations entitled to vote and which wish to do so have cast a vote?
So you can declare it closed.
I therefore declare the vote closed.
If you read the rest, the Secretary will now count.
The Secretariat will now count and verify the votes. This process may take some time, and I'd like to ask delegations to remain in the room while the counting takes place. Thank you, delegates. The following is the result of the vote. Number of members with the right to vote, 187. Number of delegations absent, 61. Number of abstentions, 21. Number of members present and voting, 105. Number of votes in favor, 98. Number of votes against, 7. The proposal to adopt decision conference paper 1 is therefore approved by 98 votes for, 7 against, 21 abstentions. I will now yield the floor to two delegations who have been asked to make a statement.
That was a point of order.
Point of order.
Yes.
Yes, I would do.
Palestine. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give a point of clarification, not a point of order. We had hoped that we wouldn't reach this stage. You know very well that we made an effort to avoid the politicization of the work of this committee. The draft decision which was just adopted was a procedural decision which bore no relationship to political matters. But you saw this morning from the way things unfolded that certain parties wanted to politicize the process. We commend the efforts which were made by the Director General over the past 10 years. Her efforts benefited all parts of the world. She knows very well that this item was always discussed in the afternoon session. However, some parties wished this morning to provoke and then to accuse others of politicization. What happened this morning was politicization. And those who voted against this draft decision, that was a form of politicization. And we wanted only to improve health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territories and the Syrian Golan. And we will continue to do so because the real problem is occupation and arrogance. And I remember when the Israeli Minister of Health came to this room and said, we allowed 45 Palestinians to receive treatment. That's our problem, ladies and gentlemen. Lastly, I would like to express my thanks to those who voted in favor of the draft decision and to those who abstained from voting and to the Director General and to the President of this committee. We hope that next year we will come back and we will agree to a decision based on the principles of the World Health Organization by consensus. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Palestine. I now yield the floor to distinguished delegate from Germany, to be followed by the distinguished delegate from the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have the honor of speaking on behalf of Austria, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Germany, Greece, Italy, Lithuania, Norway, Poland, Slovakia, and the Netherlands. We consider that the World Health Organization is no place for politics. World Health Assembly resolutions and decisions should be technical, result-oriented, and should serve global public health. We regret that, despite DG Chan's efforts, it was not possible to adopt the present decision by consensus. Within this context, we welcome the constructive approach taken by Israel, which gave its consent to the WHO mission in the occupied Syrian Golan. This is an important contribution to further depoliticizing this Assembly agenda item. It is all the more regrettable that the report of that mission was not published, not even the parts which had already been completed. This is clearly due to the Syrian behavior, which we can only condemn in the strongest terms. This is particularly deplorable in view of the abysmal health situation in other parts of Syria. According to the UN, last year alone, more than 300 medical facilities in Syria were targeted. Our goal remains to have an entirely technical text. We therefore call upon both Israelis and Palestinians to continue to work constructively with each other and with the WHO Secretariat in order to reach a consensus in the future. The draft decision, which has been adopted, is a step in the right direction. We welcome the fact that it is much shorter and more technical, and we appreciate the flexibility both Israelis and Palestinians have shown in this regard. Against this background, and as an encouragement to all parties to continue on the path towards consensus, we have decided to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Germany. Before I yield the floor to the distinguished delegate of the UK, I just wish to make an observation that we have had extensive debate on this issue, so I'd like to appeal to delegates to keep their remarks as brief as possible as we recognize you on the floor. I now yield the floor to the distinguished delegate of the United Kingdom. Following will be the distinguished delegate of Libya.
Thank you, Chairperson. The reason we had this decision today was not because of the health needs of the people in the occupied Palestinian territories, important though they are. No, the reason we had this decision was because of the political situation relating to the occupied Palestinian territories. Conflict, the absence of peace, politics itself, these all affect the health and well-being of millions, indeed billions of people, often tragically so. But we do not have decisions in the World Health Assembly relating to every conflict or civil war or political stalemate around the world. This is the only one. I would like to commend the efforts by many in this room to avoid presenting this text today. This is the World Health Assembly, not the UN General Assembly. The WHO is one of the world's most important technical agencies. It should not be a place where we argue over geopolitics. If we politicize the WHO, we do so at our peril, and we do the cause of global health and the health of our citizens a grave disservice. We all know that a just and lasting solution that ends the occupation and delivers peace for both Israelis and Palestinians is long overdue. The UK stands shoulder to shoulder with the international community in the conviction that a two-state solution is the only sustainable path for delivering justice and improving the lives of both Israelis and Palestinians. We have serious concerns about the conditions in the occupied Palestinian territories, but the politicization of their health needs does them favors, and it undermines the WHO's credibility as the globally focused and objective international health body we all support. Today, the UK voted against this politicization of the World Health Assembly, and in the hope that next year we can finally succeed in bringing it to an end. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of the United Kingdom. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Libya to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Latvia.
Chair, actually, I don't want to be somebody who's talking out of turn, and for the sake of the long debate, I'm going to refrain from making any comments.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Libya. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Latvia to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Slovenia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to explain Latvian delegation position on the decision that has been made just now. In principle, Latvian delegation supports the decision presented by the Palestinian delegation. However, this delegation is of the opinion that the World Health Assembly resolutions and decisions should be based on as full and objective information as possible. Failure to follow this principle led our delegation to abstain during the vote on the decision. We see no justification that the report on the health situation in the Syrian Golan has not been released alongside with the one on the occupied Palestinian territories. Latvia considers that the WHO and its governing bodies, all issues should be treated in a constructive, impartial, fair, transparent and depoliticized manner. We would like to thank the Palestinian delegation for constructive engagement during the process of negotiations of the text of the decision. Latvia also welcomes the decision by the Israeli government to cooperate with WHO fact-finding mission in the Syrian Golan. This is the only way how the Assembly can get impartial, professional expert information about the situation on the ground. We encourage all states to engage fully with WHO experts also in the future. This delegation hopes that both Israelis and Palestinian delegations will continue working constructively towards building consensual decisions in the future. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Latvia. I now yield the floor to the distinguished delegate of Slovenia to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Canada.
Mr. Chairman, Slovenia advocates expert resolutions in expert organization. World Health Assembly resolutions and decisions should be technical and result-oriented. We therefore welcome that the draft decision adopted today is much shorter and more technical. Our goal is to have an entirely technical text. We welcome the important decision by Israel to give its consent to the WHO fact-finding mission in the Syrian Golan. Such constructive steps are needed by all parties. We regret that the report of that mission was not published due to the Syrian behavior, which we condemn. This is the reasoning that Slovenia supports this decision and has voted yes. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Slovenia. I now recognize the distinguished delegate from Canada. Following will be the distinguished delegate from Syria Arab Republic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Canada is concerned about the continued inclusion of the standalone political agenda items in the World Health Assembly, a technical body that should avoid politicization and focus on improving global health outcomes. We welcome the efforts on behalf of the Director General and the Secretariat to have a technical text this year. In spite of progress made this year, Canada remains concerned that the report and decision are still unduly politicized. For this reason, Canada is not able to support the decision. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Canada. I now recognize the distinguished delegate from the Syrian Arab Republic.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I would like it recorded that I am extremely surprised by the manipulation which is carried out by some of the people present in this room, who spoke in a way that can only be described as contradictory. And sometimes they contradicted themselves between the beginnings of their sentence and the end. Mr. President, I listened very carefully to what was said, and I would like to emphasize the following points. First of all, the issue of not politicizing, or the claims to not be politicizing, cannot be used as an excuse in any way to remain silent with the manipulation of the Israeli authorities with the reality on the ground in the occupied Golan Heights in its attempt to emphasize the status quo of their occupation. Accepting the mission is its obligation based on humanitarian international law. Access to the mission should be unrestricted and unconditional, and that was not the case when it concerns the evaluation mission to the occupied Syrian Golan. The fact that the occupying forces misrepresent the support they give to the al-Nusra Front, is the terrorist arm of Al-Qaeda in Syria. This cannot be presented falsely as humanitarian action. And hampering the circulation of Syrians in the Golan using discriminatory measures and other measures cannot be deformed or misrepresented in this forum or in any other fora. There is no doubt that the visit of the mission to the occupied Golan for 3 days only would not allow it to evaluate the health conditions in the Golan in a comprehensive manner, because this mission was not allowed to take place since the occupation of the Golan of 1967. The occupying authorities have prevented the creation of health centers in the occupied Golan since 1967. What prevented the publishing of the evaluation report was not Syria and its behavior. It was the shortcomings and the barriers which impeded the mission. And these obstacles were due mostly to the practices of the Israeli occupying forces, which are trying to impose their illegal decisions and continue their occupation. The occupying authorities must respect international law and must allow the mission of the WHO and the missions sent by other organizations to take place, and should allow teams of these organizations to regularly visit the Golan in order to evaluate the health conditions and the living conditions of the participants in a comprehensive manner. And this was not the case when it comes to the mission which visited the Golan recently. The occupying authorities are asked to stop applying their discriminatory and unfair policies, which have led to the deterioration to the living conditions of the people living in the Golan Heights, and they do not have the necessary means to cover their medical expenses. Syria defends the rights of its citizens under occupation, and this cannot be condemned. And therefore, I would like to express my deep condemnation at what was said by Germany and Slovenia concerning this matter. It is our right as a city whose citizens are subject to arbitrary measures by an occupying power. It is our right to defend our citizens, and we will continue to do that with determination and force. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of the Syrian Arab Republic. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of Japan, to be followed by the distinguished delegate of the United States of America.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, we appreciate WHO's efforts led by DG Chan to address health conditions of Palestine. Despite the effort, it is regrettable that the decision was not adopted by consensus. We also welcome Israel's consent to allow access of the WHO mission to Golan Heights. It is regrettable, however, the report of this particular mission was not published for our consideration. We continue to support WHO's efforts to address health problems of the Palestinians from purely a technical point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Japan. I now recognize the distinguished delegate of the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The United States is appalled by the cynicism of the Syrian government in this context. As is well known to everyone in this room, the Assad government's record of bombing hospitals and targeting first responders means it has zero credibility on this issue. UN Secretary General Guterres Security Council meeting earlier today that Physicians for Human Rights has documented over 400 attacks since 2013 with over 800 medical staff killed in Syria. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of the United States of America. I see no more requests for discussions on this matter. I therefore conclude our discussion on agenda item 19.